Hi YouTube, I'm back with another video for you, and in this one I'm going to teach you how to say the K and the G sound. This is a very common error that's found amongst young children. I just want to show you that when kids go to say the K sound, they have a tendency or a very consistent pattern of errors that are produced as a T instead, and then their G sound, they go to say it and it comes out as a D sound instead. And like I said, they're very consistent and very expected, anticipated patterns of error. So for example, let's say they were to go say the word cat. Sorry about the water stain, by the way. They go to say the word cat. How do you think this would be produced? Yep, you guessed it. They produce it as tat. And same thing with the word gate. The G comes out as a D, and they would say date. As you see, their tongue is consistently being produced towards the front of the mouth instead of the back of the mouth. So when we go to teach these sounds to your kids, you want to emphasize that the K and the G are produced at the very, very back. So now the easiest way that you can teach your kid how to say this is just to elicit a cough and then shape that sound into the K or G. Another way you can do this is through play. By having them say grr like a bear or grr like a monster, and then just go back and forth that way. When they are asked to do it in play form, they don't even know that they're learning how to say these sounds. And then the other way they can use it through play is to hiss like a cat. So it could be shaped, if you know what I mean. So they start from there just to increase their self-awareness of where this tongue is supposed to be placed, and then from there to shape it into the K or G sound. Now another way that you can shape the sound is by saying it with the vowel E. Now I say E because E is produced at the very, very high and back position. So by doing that, they're already in a position where they're in the correct position. So they go E, and then all they have to do is just put their tongue down and let that burst of air come out from the back of their throat. So eek, eek. If this doesn't work for your child, you can have them open their mouth, or you can open your mouth to show them, and it'll look something like this. The reason why we want to open our mouth is to just show them where the tongue is first, and then that might get them to understand that it's set in the very, very back. Another way that you can bring the tongue all the way back is just to lay down on the floor on your back and open your mouth so that gravity can do its work and have your tongue fall back all on its own. When I was in graduate school, one of my kiddos had the most difficult time saying these sounds, and so one thing I did was I taped up some words that had the K or G sound in it. I taped it on the underside of the table, and we went down there and we laid and we just talked about each of the words while we were laying on its back. Some situations this might not work for your child, in which case I would introduce a tactile cue, and you can do this with a tongue depressor. I know many families don't have a tongue depressor. I don't have one right now on me, so you can use anything. Honestly, you can use a popsicle stick after you're done eating the popsicle. You can use a spoon. I'm trying to just get creative here. You can use the back of this measuring cup. So what you want to do, because they have a tendency of saying the t and duh, where the tongue is being lifted up, you just want to physically hold down the tongue. So it'll look like this. Ka, ka, ga, ga. And you just want to hold it down and make sure that they don't lift up that tongue. Or you can do it with the spoon. Ka, ga, ka, ga. So I hope that made sense. Another thing you can do, this might be fun, is you can grab a lollipop and then use that to hold down the tongue. The only thing about this is that from my experience, when I introduce lollipops to my clients, they tend to salivate and it gets really messy. So if the spoon works for your child, I would lean towards that more than the lollipop. in some cases, when you introduce anything like this external into the mouth, your kid might have a very strong gag reflex, and we don't want that. We don't want this to be a very negative experience for them. So I would actually introduce something like a peanut butter. It could be peanut butter or jelly, or even like a piece of Cheerio. Let me show you. So you want to get the peanut butter and put it in the back of the bottom two teeth. Ka, 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 ga, ga, ga. Why this may work for some kids is that it'll be a reference point or a go-to place for your tongue, and it'll be a tasty treat. So it'll teach them this is where your tongue should be when you say the k and g sound. Another way you can do this is to put the peanut butter actually in the very back of the mouth. Again, I would just monitor their gag reflex and make sure it's not unpleasant for them. So you put it at the very back of the tongue and have that peanut butter portion meet the roof of the mouth, like this. Ka, 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 ga, ga, ga. You can even have your kid rub their tongue, rub the peanut butter off of the top of the mouth, just to increase their awareness that that is the position that their tongue should be before they eventually produce that sound. Another thing that you can do is actually use a manipulative like a Play-Doh, and you can make it so that it's a tactile sensory experience for them where the attention is taken away from their mouth and into something else. You can use this to shape it into like a mouth and the tongue, and just for them to learn more about their body and the parts that they use to produce their sounds. What I actually do is just teach them where the front of their mouth is, where the back of their mouth is. By doing something like this, like a tongue, you can say, oh, you know, when you say the t and d sound, it's going up your tongue tip, but this is what we want, where the back goes up and it touches the roof of your mouth, like that, and not this. We're learning a new sound where your back of the tongue goes up like that and your tongue tip stays down. Another thing with food that you can do is honestly just get some water, ask them to gargle because that's done at the very back of the throat. If none of these strategies work for you, that's okay. Oftentimes, kids just go at their own pace, and when they're ready, they will eventually say it. More often than not, I would just say that some kids than others need a little bit more time to develop. Considering articulation is a very fine motor process where intentionality is required. What you can do is work on activities that targeting minimal pairs. So I want to just show you, teach them how to discriminate between the sounds of the K versus T and G versus D. This is a resource by David Sindri, and his materials are absolutely fantastic. I will link his profile down below. He makes amazing interactive games for children with articulation disorders. I can say, I see the word tall, and they would pick this one. They would put the parrot on, and if I were to say, oh, I see the word call, call, they would essentially pick this one. Now, the reason why this is so important is because if you can see, these words are exactly the same except for the difference of the first letter. But as both you and I know, this first letter makes all the difference in terms of what that word means. So if your child is saying tape to represent the sticky office supply, as well as to refer to the type of clothing that superheroes wear, then that would make it a language deficit, more so than an articulation deficit. So just to clarify, it would no longer mean that they physically have difficulty producing this sound, but rather that it's stemming from a language issue, because in their brains, tape is represented for both of these words. I would first work on these listening and auditory discrimination tasks with them, just so they can learn that the difference between a T versus K and a D versus a G makes a world of a difference in terms of meaning and attaching meaning to the world around them. In next week's video, I'm going to be talking about my day in a life as a speech language pathologist, remote version and in-person version. So if you're interested in that, please make sure to follow along with me on my journey, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.